Hey y'all, welcome to a new episode of Hustlers Anonymous. It's just me this week. Wanted to keep holding it down. I got this fresh haircut. I ain't wanted to go to waste for y'all. Um, but still want to get into some entertainment news, some hustlers talk, and a little bit of everything else. Um, First and foremost, Demure. Demure got the streets on lock right now. So, for those that don't know, Demure is a term that means reserved and shy. It's been popularized by TikTok creator Jules LeBron. She's a beauty influencer, and essentially, she earlier this month launched a video basically talking about how she shows up to work with demure looking makeup, basically reserved, and her whole thing was very classy, very mindful, very demure. And it's taken off to the point where other TikTok influencers are posting about it and using the word as well. It's been trending on social media all weekend. Most recently, she announced that she identifies as a transgender woman, and she is actually now able to finalize her surgery and finalize her transition. So shout out to Jules, and just shout out to TikTok for creating influencers and allowing a space for terms like that. And you know, at the end of the day, content creators don't get enough love. Put a lot of time in, and she mentioned it in one of her videos, saying basically like she went from being a cashier doing quick videos during work, and now she's able to fly across country because of this, right? The White House used the term on social media on the Joe Biden post. So it's just, little things like that. Shout out to her. It's a real good look. It's going to be a quick episode because not much debate, just giving y'all facts and details. I want to jump into Chloe Bailey. She dropped her sophomore album a couple of weeks now already. And I don't know, it's just something about Chloe, right? Like, I think we all want to like Chloe. I think we hope the best for Chloe, right? Like, so Chloe was introduced to us as part of Chloe and Halle, right? Like, we love the youngness, we love the youth. She started switching it up, and they did acting. They were both on Grownish. She appeared in Swarm, and I think that's when she decided she was going to cut loose. And I enjoy Chloe's music, but someone posted talking about how sexual it is and how she tries so hard to be sexual. And I think everyone agrees, right? Like, it's okay to just do an R&B ballad. It's okay to just be calm in whatever it is you're doing. And it just felt like that album was, how can I be as raunchy and raw? There's a song about a rose on it, right? Like, and basically herself pleasuring herself, right? We get it, Chloe, but can we just keep it regular R&B and maybe go back to cool slow jams? I don't know. As much as I tried to get into the project, I've listened to it a few times now. It doesn't really stick to the ribs, and I get it. That's most R&B music nowadays. Like, as much as you try to play it, and that's just most music, not hip hop, not R&B. Just most music doesn't really have a lot of replay value to it. The rollout for this album was a little weird for me. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. I know there was a single that dropped initially, and then, it kind of radio silence, and then all of a sudden, album is here. It just didn't feel like there was a push behind it from her team or, label, whatever the case may be. I wanted the best for her from the beginning. She reminds me a lot of Beyonce early on in her career, And obviously, Chloe and Halle were never as big as Destiny's Child. That's not what I'm saying. Just in terms of like the potential she had, and then going from, girl group to, and yes, obviously things were going to change, right? Like I didn't expect her to be a child when she came out as Chloe Bailey and, just Chloe, which is what she really goes out as. I didn't expect her to still be that young girl, but from day one she popped out twerking and she popped out like really taking it to another level, which again kind of Beyonce did a lot, when she made that transition to Dangerously in Love. I think what and I won't call it an issue, but I think what artists when I think of the women R&B artists of this time, and a lot of the guys too, but I think it's more present and prevalent with the women. There is a need, and what most of these young ladies are missing, and when I say these young ladies, I'm talking about Chloe, I'm talking about Coco Jones, I'm talking about even Halle Bailey. They are missing that producer that can really help create a sound for them. And when I say a sound, like you need something for this entire album so that we know the journey that you're taking us on. We need a theme for this album. Like that's just what we're missing on their projects. And it just doesn't feel like it's cohesive and it makes sense. I'd put Babyface on a lot of these projects and they could really have something. But they need a Babyface, a Rodney Jerkins. They need something that Brandy and Monica and them had, Timbaland for Aaliyah. They need that because that is what is going to take their careers to the next level. And I get it, budgets are different now. It's not the same budget a Brandy or Monica had, right? Like, and for Monica, it was Dallas Austin. And that's why I say it's the same for the men, because for Usher, it was a JD, right? Like, there were producers who could craft this sound for you, right? We get the right writers. For Janet Jackson, it was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, right? Like, and again, it's a situation where I know the budgets is different. I know music as a whole is different. I hope we can get back there. I think that's all I could hope for, but it's a need, and as crazy as it is, Summer Walker has had that, right? Like she had a sound crafted through her entire project, and a lot of that was because she was working with London on the track, right? Like, I know that was her baby father. I know, there was a lot of drama there, but when you have that one person who can kind of be a visionary for your project, because as artists and as creatives, like, you're pushed and pulled in a lot of different ways, right? Like, you start to get how many producers that want to get on a track with you and do a song with you. You have all these features that want to get on the track and do a song with you. You have all these features that you want, right? Like, I'd like to hear how I sound with such and such and so on and so forth. The problem, though, is you kind of need a third party who's like, cool, we can save that song for the next project, or we can use that feature for something else, right? Like, we'll throw that on a soundtrack or something. I know they don't really do the soundtracks no more, but that's how it used to be, right? Like, so you can really craft what's the 411 album, a Never Say Never album, right? Like, you could really craft those things, and I just don't feel like there's those producers behind a lot of these artists to craft those things. I know SZA kind of got away with it, and her project was cohesive enough. It was number one for about 7 weeks. So who am I to say it didn't get the job done? But I think that's just the case with a lot of these artists, and we might even be able to say it's the same for the hip hop side, right? Like, so much of this music is forgettable because there isn't a theme. There's no. It's literally just one-off songs. It's like, okay, cool, but there really just isn't something to connect this. It's not like we watching the music videos, right? So what is the thing that is going to make us think about this, talk about this 3-4 weeks from now? It could be a great song, but like, is it a banger? Like, it's just something that needs to be worked on. I've worked in this industry 20 years, so I've seen, what it takes to build a Miguel from scratch, right? Like, for example, since he's right behind me, I've seen the amount of work it goes into some of these newer artists and like really molding a sound, developing a sound, and really getting you to a point where you're dropping an album. That doesn't really happen much more. It's like, here we go, album's here. I record all these songs, might as well just turn them into a project. And I know saying that, and just like, I know how much work it goes into putting an album, right? Like, you're how many sessions, how many songs, how many, like, I get all that. I'm not, trying to downplay that for these artists. But at the same time, like, we gotta take a step back, because it doesn't make sense to the projects that are dropping and just to turn that. And I know, Chloe got some fans who love the album and who are gonna run it back, and I'm sure of all that. But the numbers not giving that. So how do we get there? Moving on. That's the R&B side. I want to quickly talk about New York hip hop, right? Like, so I feel like for the easily last decade, right, and maybe longer, because I was thinking about the other day, Jay-Z dropped Blueprint 3 15 years ago, right? And depending on who you are, you might not even like that album. You might, but that had like Run This Town on it. That had Run This Town was on it. That also had the New York State of Mind on it. So that was like the last time New York had a run for real, right? Like, and an artist, I feel like that was kind of the end of Jay. And I know he dropped 444 and people love that, or you feel how you feel about that album, but I feel like that's when his run kind of like ended. And I just feel like New York's been struggling to find that sound ever since. And when I look at the last decade or so, like, we had a quick little minute for Pop Smoke. We had, and unfortunately he passed. Maybe that run would have been longer. 504 tried to come out, and that, he was able to get Kanye to executive produce that album. He kind of did the New York anthem with Alicia Keys. It didn't hit like it should have hit, but Kanye being on the song kind of hurt it, to be honest, because it's a New York anthem, but you got Kanye on it. Just didn't make much sense. And then it just felt like Fabio was trying so hard to please other areas. Like, Quavo was on the second single. It felt very Atlanta heavy, even though this was supposed to be like a New York. He was basically trying to take it for Pop Smoke and run with it from there. That didn't really work. Cardi just hasn't had the consistency. We talked about it last episode, but that's just the truth of the matter. Like, she's not consistent enough to say like she's holding it down for the whole city, and that's not what Nicki's trying to do at this point either. So, there goes that. Ice Spice, kind of popped out and she offered at it. Same for Scarlett. Maybe a year, maybe it's already been 2 years ago now for Scarlett, right? So like, we've had the women artists try to be the torchbearers as well. That hasn't quite worked. All that to say, it just feels like there isn't. Maybe New York's run is really done. Like, maybe we really wrapped up, and that's a conversation like I'm not even really ready for. But maybe that's just the truth of the matter. Like, we don't have the artists who can take it there and hit that level, And I kind of bring it up because Benny the Butcher dropped his latest project. It's a 6-song EP. It's just not long enough to say that it's a quality project. It's really like 6 tracks with like 4 skits on it. So it doesn't do it. And there is, what it lacks is a summer anthem, right? Like, it's called like Summer Something, summer whatever, it doesn't matter. It lacks that summer vibe to really take it to that next level, right? So that's the struggle with it. Other artists like Benny and that crew tried a couple years ago to really cement themselves. And the best way I could describe it with Griselda, right? Like, as much as I enjoy Griselda's music, Griselda is G Unit without 50 Cent, right? Like, you take away 50 from G Unit, and you just have, you got some dudes who can spit, you got some dudes who Wayne that's great, but you don't have the classic album, right? Like, you take away Get Rich or Die Trying, and G Unit never finds the success that it wants to find, right? Like, even with the Game, you're not even able to get a Game on that crew, and that's probably what Griselda's missing, like another artist from a different area who can really elevate their sound for them. Those are all talented individuals. Westside, Benny, talented. They just don't, they're not classic artists. They're not going to give you a classic album, and unfortunately, Griselda's never going to blow the way it should, right? Now, that's not a knock on Griselda. It's not a knock on anything. But, again, it leaves New York in this position of wanting and needing that artist or an artist who can help catapult us into this next decade of music. I'd hate for us not to be able to compete for the next 10 years because we keep losing to Atlanta, right? And the big thing is, like, we don't have to shift to sound like Atlanta. We just need to figure out how we are going to elevate our own artists and as a collective really pop. Now, other artists that, almost did it, Capella Gray had an amazing run, right? Like, honestly, with Capella, he just signed to the wrong label. I was one of the first, Parlay was one of the first magazines to write about Capella, and really how massive that summer was. That's already been, 3 years ago, when he dropped Gallus, right? Like, and Capella just dropped his debut album not too long ago. It's a decent project. It's a great project. But it still doesn't help catapult him to where he could have been. I truly just feel like with Capella, he signed to Capitol Records. I've been in the industry a while. I could have told you Capitol Records was not the move, and I get it, right? They were giving the best deal, probably giving the best advance. But Capitol Records is notorious for flopping hip-hop and R&B artists. Like, and the last artist they had over in that area that worked for real was actually Jay Holiday. So, like, the reality of it, they're just not good at hip-hop and R&B. And I'm maybe not good at much, but, I'm just going to say for sure, I know the hip-hop and R&B side is not their bag. And they've had more artists that they fumbled in recent years than artists that have been successful. I think if Capella would have signed to a Def Jam or something like that could have helped Universal. That could have really helped him. And he had the features. He had the good looks. He had things happening for him. And I know if you ask Capella, he'll tell you, like, the run isn't over. He's still vibing responsibly and all that other stuff. And I'm with it. I'm hoping for the best. But it just feels like that time came and went. Like, it's not too many artists that pop with such a banging single who have a hit like that and then are able to come back 3-4 years later and all of a sudden find the same success as that first hit. Like, you quickly fall into that one-hit wonder bag, even if that's not honestly the case, right? Like, I know Bay Chess is a hit, right? And I know that's an interpolation of what he did with Gallus, but do the people care enough? And honestly, they don't. They don't. Like, and I know he has a New York and a local fan base. I don't know what that looks like in the rest of the country and the rest of the world, for that matter. All I have to say, I I'm intrigued by Cash Cobain, right? Like Cash has dropped his new song. I believe it's called Problem, and it's like a crew joint. Like Fab's on it. A bunch of dudes jump on this track, and a couple of women as well. And maybe Cash Cobain is that thing. You know, I have only like he got the Fisher song. Ice Spice jumped on the remix to that. Like maybe Cash Cobain is what New York needs and what New York's been missing, right? Maybe he is that artist that helps propel New York to the next level. I'm not sure, I think there's a lot to be seen still, but he made the XXL freshman cover, and he got some songs moving. So I guess y'all could let me know, is Cash Cobain that guy? Last thing I kind of want to get into, and this is for the hustlers, right? So I went back and I watched Snowfall. I watched every episode of Snowfall from the beginning. And the whole reason I watched it was to attempt to figure out where Franklin messed up, right? And as an entrepreneur myself, like, I was just thinking about, like, so many things can go wrong in your hustle, right? Like, things can be going perfectly, and then all of a sudden, just one bad move throws your whole equilibrium off, throws the whole game off for you. So I was trying to figure out what it was for Franklin Saint that took him from being on top of the game to obviously ending things, being alcoholic and crashing out, right? So here's my attempt at analyzing Franklin Saint and the good, the bad, and where it all went wrong, right? And obviously Franklin Saint was a drug dealer, so this isn't, this isn't to say, he had a great business model to begin with, right? He was working with, basically working with the FBI and the CIA, and it was a lot of law enforcement involved. It was just bad to begin with, right? Like, this was all bad. But nonetheless, right? Like, he had something, right? Like, he had something that he could have helped take and could have took him to the next level. And essentially, what he actually did was got most of his family killed, his mom locked up. Most of his friends killed or locked up or, crashed out. Like, so all that to say, like, what went wrong, right? So I went back and, you got to start with season 1, right? Like, season 1, when he kills Kevin, right? And I got it, right? Even though I'm Kevin, like, I got that Kevin had to die. So that's not the issue. The issue, though, was he couldn't get his whole team on board with what needed to happen. And that probably should have happened before he even had to kill Kevin, right? Like, the only reason he had to kill Kevin was because he didn't help Kevin understand that the bigger picture was everybody being on the same page, right? And once he couldn't do that, that was his biggest issue. And I think that was maybe Franklin's biggest issue throughout the entire series. Franklin had a terrible way of communicating, right? Like, he just couldn't understand how to get his people. As much as he would talk about my people, and I'm trying to help my people and all this other stuff, he couldn't get his own people to kind of understand his vision and get them on the same page and be able to work things out with them, which is why he had to kill Kevin, which is why, him and his auntie couldn't figure it out, right? Like, I just felt like they just need to have a couple of conversations. I know she was where she was at. She was trying to get her and Jerome popping. Like, I get that, but it just feels like they could have strategized that better. And he could have got them on the same page. And I know I jumped a lot because we already on we already on that, but I feel like there was a lot of filler in between. Like, yeah, he had some ups and downs, but couldn't do nothing about, his next door neighbor shooting him. Okay, he had to kill the cop. It actually worked out, right? Like, that didn't hurt him much. Scully and Manboy, though, that was one of my big red flags, right? And it goes back to communication. Like, the fact that he couldn't get Scully and Manboy to dead this beef, and like, that was a mess, right? Like, there was no reason why at that time specifically, Manboy was like the dude he was doing the best business with. Right? Like, it was Jerome and Manboy, right? Scully was a reliable, you knew what you was getting from Scully, right? He was reliable, he did his part. It wasn't nothing crazy on that side. I just don't understand how that all crashed and burned so quickly without him being able to put a kibosh on it to figure out how to. That wasn't a situation where one of them had to die. Like, and then from there, it really turned up because it just continued to get messy. That's how you ended up having Scully's child and baby mother had to get killed. Like, it got so messy because Franklin lacked communication from jump, right? At the end of the day, like, I guess it worked out. Scully, Scully forgave him. Scully was cool, but things just got so damn messy so quickly, and it just, what he was doing was removing allies, right? Like, he didn't have people around him that he could trust. He didn't have people around him that felt like they were going to be good. He didn't have people around him that, were reliable, and that testament, like, his own man, his security dude stealing his money from him. Like, that one I think caught all of us off guard. Like, we didn't see that coming. Could he have prevented that? Probably. It just felt like also like he had all his eggs in one basket, and it does come down to the end and how things came all apart. But at that point when he got robbed, like, he had all his money at the stash house. So stash house got hit, it was over. Like, there was nothing else to do. Like, now you need to figure this out from scratch. But then once he, pivoted and he had the legit businesses, he had all these things, how was all your money all in the same offshore accounts, like, that were so easily able to be touched? Like, it just, like, you deserved everything Teddy did to you. Like, because at that point, you already knew you couldn't trust Teddy anyway, right? Like, this man probably got your pops killed. I get it. Your relationship with your pops wasn't nothing amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that made sense that you didn't care that much. I don't get it, but I get it, right? But nonetheless, right? Like, you can't trust this man. So the fact that you were trusting the access he gave you and the accounts he gave, you need to have 3, 4, 5 different situations so that everything wasn't tied up to one boat. It's no different than hustlers, right? Like, you got to diversify your hustle. Just because one thing is working today doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. And he was starting to do that with the homes, but then that's another thing hustlers deal with, right? Like, sometimes we get swayed just because something looks pretty. It's now going to be something that is going to take up a large amount of money and a large amount of our resources. Is that necessarily the best use of our resources and our time, right? And that was the thing with the houses, the apartments, everything he was doing, the rental properties. I know that was his way of getting out the game, but the fact that he didn't even have it all paid off and None of that was squared away. This was literally, I am going to have to put so much resources into this thing just to make it move. And so much time and energy has to be in that direction. So that way, you don't have enough time to focus on what's going on outside in the streets. You don't have enough time to get your people in order. You don't, like, people's all plotting on this man, and he's trying to figure out how to get rental properties off the ground, right? Like, it just felt like he never had a solid number two, right? Leon was supposed to be that, but Leon really wasn't messing with him for several seasons, right? Like, they were on and off since Kevin died, right? Like, Leon respected him, Leon needed him, but Leon was never gonna be his number two, right? Or his 1B or whatever the case may be. It just wasn't how their dynamic was set up. But that's what he was missing. And he tried to make up for that by trying to have his mother play that number two at times. He tried to make up for that by having his girlfriend play that number two at times. All situations that just don't mix, don't work, don't do it. Right? Like, and I think that was the other thing. Like, when it came to his mother, when it came to his girlfriend, baby mother, fiance, whatever she was in the end, he was putting people in positions that they weren't ready for. They didn't necessarily ask to be in. And just because that person works well in one area of your life doesn't mean you can just bring them over to another area and it's going to be seamless. It's going to work out. And I think that was one of the big things for me watching it. Like, gotta be careful of who you promote. Gotta be careful of who you have, and you put too much responsibility on them. Because even when we look at what happened with him and Teddy in the end, in the very end, I'm trying to do this without giving too many spoiler alerts for those who haven't watched it. But when you look at what happened with him and Teddy at the very end, like, Sissy ain't need to be there. Like, why was Sissy there? Like, how did she help in that moment? Like, she's the last person that should have been there. Especially if she's telling you, like, after this we done, like, you don't need to be here. let me bring you somewhere. Like, where was Leon in that moment? Like, it just obviously it was a lot for me to, like, rewatch this and really, like, try to understand where this thing was going wrong on so many levels. And, like, it was like the end of Boys in the Hood watching Ricky die. And it's like, come on, like, can you pivot or something? Can you do something, fam? You an athlete. Like, Ricky, like, get it together, fam. That's what it felt like watching this all over again and, like, really trying to analyze it at the same time. Right? Like, so many people let Franklin die, man. From Peaches to obviously even Leon, right? Sissy, of course, but she wasn't built for that. Jerome, you know what I'm saying? Like, just so many people let him down, and he just didn't have his CEO hat on, right? And it was on, but it wasn't where it needed to be, right? And in all honesty, like, once you make a lot of those mistakes and you're in that position of, I had it all yesterday, I just got to do this one thing to get it back, I kind of understand everything after him being robbed by Teddy, right? Like, he really didn't have much of a choice at that point, right? Like, I am going to go as hard as possible because I need to get my money back, right? I need to at least get to where I was yesterday. So I did get that, right? Like, there's nothing you can do. I can't really blame that man for that. But, like, you just made so many mistakes leading up to here that now you can't even think straight. and because you don't have somebody to rely on, because you don't have, you literally crashed out. And at that point, like, you need so many things to go perfectly that if you don't have the right team to rely on, if you don't have the systems in place already where your operation is moving smoothly, because to be honest, even if he would have gotten that money back from Teddy, his operation was already so cracked and flawed that I don't know where he would have went from there. Right? If Sissy would have left and stopped managing the houses, there would have been that. He had a whole baby on the way. This woman who was running his business operations was clearly not reliable to begin with, but she was in a position where she just had too much going on, and that's not the person that should be running this anyway, right? Like, her focus, she already had left him early in the season. Early in the season, she was like, yeah, no, I gotta be away because there's too much drama. I can't deal with this. That's somebody you need to, I get it. You're not built for this. Let me put you over here. I need to have the person that's gonna run point over here. And in all honesty, like, that was Leon, and it was probably Wanda, right? And I get it, like, Wanda had messed up before, but, like, sometimes, you show and prove, and, like, she was resourceful. She was the person who probably could have got this ship righted on the business side with Leon, and really, like, they came together with a triangle offense type of plan. This thing could have been where it needed to be. I get it. Still could have messed up, right? But maybe you wanted to crash and burn as badly as it did. I hate that for Franklin. I really do. But that was it. That was my moment for the Hustlers. You can take that and apply that to any business you're running, right? Like, any hustle you have. Those are the things that you need to, like, really take stock of. Because if you don't have your team in order, if you don't have the right people in the right positions, if you have all your eggs in one basket, if you try to pivot into another business totally, that's going to take so much of your resources, time, energy, etc., etc., trying to grow too fast, that can be problematic, right? It's all those things, right? Like, there were so many elements, and that is why, even, as an entrepreneur, I watched it with yes, it's entertainment, I get all that. Yes, they were moving drugs and not the greatest business model, but I watched it as an entrepreneur, and I watched it to, like, where am I going wrong? Where did my years swerve off, right? And it honestly was therapeutic for me. Right, and we started Hustlers Anonymous because I said every entrepreneur needs therapy, but every entrepreneur probably needs some sort of Hustlers Anonymous, man, where you can talk about your issues and where things went wrong, and and the fact that you still want to do this. You wake up and you still ready to get at it again, despite what went wrong yesterday. And I truly believe Franklin probably still got a money scheme now, right? Like, real life Franklin still like, yo, all I need is 2 more birds, bro. Get this thing back moving, right? Like, unfortunately, like, that's what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, man. You don't want to fully crash out. You don't want to burn yourself out the way that he did, and you don't want everything around you to crumble before you kind of figure out what you need to do, what your next steps are. So that's that, man. That was this week's episode of Hustlers Anonymous. Nice and short. Next week we should be back, myself and Penny Blackwright. In the meantime, make sure you follow us on social media, subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure you @Parlay with me is my @. Make sure you follow me on my personal accounts. Make sure you check out the magazine, ParlayMag.com, and @ParlayMag on all social media. You see it behind you, PARLE. That's that. See you next week.